So like I was saying about the man. No, I'm joking.
I mean, basically, we were gonna get into it one way or another.
Go.
So first off,
Uh-huh.
I read your name when you gave me the pronunciation as Ayize, and then I heard you say your own name on a clip in Instagram and heard Ayize.
Yep.
So could you please correct me?
Ayize.
Ayize. So it's
Ayize.
ye, like all ye men.
Oh, okay. The Y-E, I wasn't thinking Old English. I was thinking like
Same.
like French or something. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was my mom. She did it to me.
No, that's pretty. I like it. I think I like that better. I just didn't want to mess it up.
It's all good.
Yeah. Okay.
Just so you know, when I see your name, I see Renee Candy because I'm dyslexic.
Oh,
So I'm always like, her name Candy? That's not. Oh no, it's not Candy. That's close enough.
yeah, Kennedy. I mean, people usually say like Kennedy, and then when I say Kennedy, people usually spell it like Kennedy. So it's whatever. It's whatever people want to call me.
That's how I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. But we can get into it. I can start off with the first half of your bio. We cut it into two halves because it was very impressive and we didn't want to gloss over too much.
Where did you get it from? I got like 8 different bios flying around out there.
We stole it from your website. So,
Yeah,
you know.
mostly off your website.
Which website?
You have
The one with your
multiple
books.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so yeah, that's the right one. And then I have like my plant medicine sort of therapy. Other one.
What? You do plant medicine therapy?
I mean, yeah.
Wow.
We'll definitely get into that.
Look, I'm so glad this is happening because like I totally agreed to this because you guys sounded cool. And then I was like, what am I doing? Like, why are they interviewing me? Because like Justin was saying, I got a book coming out this week. Or maybe that was you, I'm sorry. And so like I thought it was on that, but then like there's a lot of Black people that like want to talk to me about plant medicine and like Black people in plant medicine. So I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just gonna show up. So
hey, that means you can talk about all of it. All right. So I'll get into your bio.
Okay.
Ayize Jama-Everett calls the Bay Area his home despite being born in New York City. He holds a master's in divinity, a master's in clinical psychology, and a master's in fine arts creative writing. Jama-Everett has worked as a bartender, a translator, a drug and alcohol counselor, a stand-up comedian, a script doctor, a ghostwriter, a high school dean, a college professor, and for a brief time, distiller of spirits. And this is just the first half of your biography, and we're just gonna stop here and like, ooh, okay. So we see you've been in so many spaces, and of course, our favorite stand-up comedian. No, I'm just joking. All of it is so cool. I don't know, maybe drug and alcohol counselor, but like, first off, just like, how did you get into all of this stuff? Because like, you're not like 80, you know? Like, I think like, I'm like, when I have my career goals of like how many things I want to do before I die, like, I would say like maybe like half of this list and then I'm good.
Right.
You're like kind of at the like apex of everything. So, which is like, ooh. So could you just, how did you get into all of this stuff? And do you sleep?
Yeah, sleep. Sleep is good. It's important. 8 hours if I can. I like my sleep. No, I mean it's struggle bus. You know what I mean? Like it's you know, pretty much not taking money from anybody else from the time I was on 14, 15 on, and just like what'll get me fed, you know, and what'll what can I do where's the way that I can maximize like my skills to the best of my ability? For the longest time, I said I had soft skills, interaction, talking to people, getting people to
Mhm.
chill out, stuff like that. So that's kind of what I caked off of. And then, started getting to be a little more strategic and being like, okay, what do I actually want to do? And the thing that I've like actually wanted to do my entire life is to write. Like I just want to write. I want, it's still a dream of mine. I want to write the X-Men comic book. You know what I mean? I just want like 4 or 5 years on the X-Men, just fucking blowing it out the water. Um,
Mm.
and so like, it was like, okay, well, what steps can I take to get closer to that? And then there's just I was telling my people like, don't get good at something you don't like.
Mm.
Like you can get paid very well for doing some shit that you don't like that you're good at. And then you got
Mhm.
these golden handcuffs. So in a few of those situations, like in a few of those jobs, that was the issue. It wasn't that I loved them, it was just that I was good at it.
Mm.
Like, well, you're good at it and no one else is paying you for the other things that you like to do.
Mhm.
Get that money.
So, which of those jobs were passion jobs, and which of those jobs were pay the
For the
bill jobs?
shmoney.
All right, you got to go one by one. I can't even remember them all right now.
Okay, right. Okay. So we'll start with bartender, translator, and then drug and alcohol counselor.
Bartender, shmoney, translator, shmoney. No, yeah, shmoney. It was shmoney. I was in Morocco.
Oh.
Yeah. My boys had a touring company, and they needed someone who spoke English well for the American tourists. So I got to travel around Morocco for free, saying shit that they would say to me in broken English, or, Kamazir or Arabic. And then I'd be like, okay, that's what they're saying. So that was fun. It was fun. It was cool. It was a good time.
Oh wow.
Awesome.
Drug and alcohol counselor started out as money and ended up being passion. Um, and it was like the last thing I wanted to do because like
Mm.
my mom like worked for ambulatory detox in Harlem Hospital in New York from like
Mm.
time I was a kid to like when I left home. So like if I knew one that's like, that's the thing that right? Like I can talk to people on drugs. Like
Mm.
that's not a heroin, crack, LS, PCP,
Mm.
doesn't matter. I'm like, I'm cool, whatever. Like, I'm not going to trip out on this. Um,
Mm.
so it started out like that, but then like seeing the impact that I could actually make, that's when I was like, no, this actually matters. This actually matters to me. So
And then like from there, like that passion, is that kind of what led to the more like looking into like, plant medicinal therapies and stuff like that, or is that at all related?
yeah, totally. I mean, because it's for me, it was all about helping people, right?
Mm.
And like, when I first started, I was working at a 12-step, like a spot that had like harm reduction and not harm reduction, sorry, behavior modification,
Mm.
12-step, kind of like down the line, kind of rigid, like you sit like this, you do like this, you be like this, you do like this, and that'll keep you clean and sober and healthy and da 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 da. And I bought in. I was like, okay, that's what they said, and they've been doing this shit for 30 years and da da da.
Mhm.
You look at the outcome studies, and that's like 12% success rate, 10% success rate.
Damn.
And I was like,
Mm.
oh, so nah, dude. Like, I don't know if like the damage and
Mhm.
rupture being done to this community is worth 10 to 12%. Like, you got to go higher than like if you telling me
Mhm.
I got to tell parents that they got to kick their kids out of the house for tough love, you got to know that it's
Mm.
clearly more than like 1 in 10 of these kids is gonna make it. Like I can't back
Mm.
that up. And at
Mm.
the same time in the Bay Area, we started shifting, like all these agencies started shifting more towards harm reduction, which basically says like you can reduce the amount of harm associated with substance use without
Mhm.
necessarily reducing the substance use.
Mhm.
Right? So like, needle exchange is kind of like what most people think of when they think of harm reduction, but it's also condoms. It's also
Mm-hmm.
toothbrush and toothpaste for folks. It's also tampons and pads, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
also like giving people housing. It's also like, childcare, right? Like all these different things can be harm reduction. So once I was like, oh, because you start thinking about it and you're like, well, how is it all these senators and these congressmen and these like local people can be sitting in their houses getting drunk till the cows come home, popping more pills than I have names for, and yet they're not considered a substance using population. But these cats who just don't have stable housing, don't have access to clean drugs, they're seen as the menace. Like, what is
Mm-hmm.
that about? I'm like, okay, so maybe it's actually not about the substance use.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Maybe it's about some of the other shit. Maybe if we cover some of the other shit, then the substance use either decreases on its own, which happens, or isn't a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you got clean heroin and you're shooting up 2 times a day, and you shoot up before you go to work, and you carry on your 9 to 5, and you have your relationships with everybody, and everything's cool, and then you come home and you shoot up when you get home, and you don't fuck with anybody, I don't care if you do heroin.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you don't want to do heroin anymore at that point, we can have that conversation, but it's no longer a social problem.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Why do you think people are so uncomfortable with hearing the idea of, someone just being able to just do drugs for the sake of doing drugs? Because I think we make up, all these good and valid excuses. Like, okay, we say like, well, drugs are medicine. We know marijuana is medicine, or drugs are a way to cope, or, people need them. But like the idea of somebody just recreationally doing something for the fun of doing it, why is that a problem? Why is that something that we've been taught to like police ourselves
Oh,
about?
it's not a problem. We know it's not a problem. Because if it was a problem, if the drugs are the problem, we wouldn't have all manner of beer and alcohol at every sporting event that's out there,
Mm-hmm.
right? We know that people can use substances recreationally. My puppy is being weird over here, so don't worry about it. Puppy, stop it. The recreation is not a problem. It's the substance that's a problem. And here's the issue. Every single substance that we got has some racial connotation connected with it,
Mm-hmm.
right? That makes us think that this is the problem, right? So alcohol, even when alcohol, first in the US, it was like, you're looking at these Puritans and these like white Anglo-Saxon Protestants, and they're looking at all these like European immigrants coming in, and they're like, they drink too much beer, they drink too much wine, they drink too much this, they drink too much that, right? Because they don't have that substance using culture, and they have their own problems associated with that, right? But then those people who later became white, they were like, no, this is acceptable form of recreation, so we're going to have cocktail hour. In fact, and then even with like nicotine, we're like, hey, you know what we're going to do? We're gonna give you a break in the day so that you can take this substance. We're gonna call it a smoke break. We're gonna create a technology that makes tobacco. Say, man, this is tobacco, right? This is what tobacco is supposed to look like. Okay.
Oh, you got some good stuff.
Yeah. This stuff's supposed, folks have been using it for thousands of years as incense, as a cleansing, all that stuff. What does America do? It's like, okay, you can do it for 15 minutes. And we're going to create a technology so that it lasts exactly for 15 minutes. That's why we have a 15-minute smoke break. You're supposed to be able to smoke 2 in 7.5 minutes. Like one each, 7.5 minutes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the issue is not recreation and substance. The issue is the substance, right? Is it the marijuana, right? Like Mexican, right? Like Mexican drug used used across the country, used across this hemisphere, right? But in the 1920s, when the Depression is going on, and these Mexican immigrants that were invited into the country when people didn't want to work, sound familiar? Now they're trying to kick them out again. And so what does the Hearst company do? They start running all these articles about the dangers of marijuana and the marijuana menace, right? And how you get America down to like stop anything, just threaten white women, right? these Mexicans are gonna be out here touching these white women. They're like, ah, get them out and get this marijuana out too, right? Same thing with cocaine, right? Cocaine, just the coca plant alone, forget the processing of cocaine, but like coca plant, again, thousands of years, been used in the Andes.
Medicine.
Huge amounts of calcium in it, right? Totally opens up respiratory tracts when you're in high altitude so you can actually breathe, right? Totally kills appetite, right? So if there's not a lot going around, you get to go a few days without eating and be relatively okay, right? So it gets processed and processed and processed, and that whole thing is sick. But then you have this cocaine and dock workers again, 20s, 30s, 40s, and New Orleans, Black dock workers are using it because they're doing serious physical labor, 12, 13, 14 hours a day, right? So they're like, yeah, I need something to keep me going. I'm not mad.
Also like ration to like soldiers and stuff, or maybe that was like back in the like World Wars, stuff like kind of deal.
I know that was meth. I don't know.
That was meth, my bad.
No, it's all good. Right, but then what happens with cocaine, right? It's like, again, I mean, literally, this is the headline, which I freaking love this headline. I'm gonna name a band after this. Cocaine crazed Negroes, right? I'm like, yes, tell me more about these cocaine crazed Negroes. You know, but then, and then what was it? Cocaine crazed Negroes attacking white women, right? And literally in the South, cops got higher calibers of bullets because they were like, Negroes will not be stopped on cocaine with a 22. And I'm like, y'all some funny individual, you know? So all of our drug laws are basically, they're not based off of health, they're based off of racism.
But it's interesting that like, based off of health, like that was the logic of them, is that we were made different. Biologically, we were made different. Like, we see that even in the medical community today. Like,
yeah. Man, I went to the dentist and I got knocked out because that's the only way I can sit in that chair. And I'm coming back, and this dental assistant, she's like, "Oh, was that hard?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't feel good." She's like, "Yeah, it was a really hard extraction." She said, "I think it's because Black people's bones are denser than white people's." And I'm half drugged out, and I'm like, "What did this first say to me?"
Just says that, like
out loud. I was like, "You tell your husband that at home. Don't tell me that." Like,
they were over there selling you to death.
Never went back. I didn't pay the bill either. I did. Shouldn't have. I was mad.
Oh, yeah. The healthcare system's rough out here. But honestly, speaking of, I feel like we've gotten into, you know, health activism and all of that and harm reduction. You've come from, you know, a very prominent political line of poets, activists, freedom fighters, healers, and, you know, health and like healing Black people, like that's like, I just love to hear about it, because I think we talk so much about biomedical racism, which is true and a fact, and it's out here, but like how we can actually move forward and take care of ourselves and embrace what's like good and has always been good and will continue to be good and will like be even greater is just so important to me. So can you just tell us about your lineage? Because like, you, yeah, go for it.
Well, on my mom's side, you know, I come from a bunch of Black women from North Carolina that were all healers in some way. My grandma was a nurse, my aunt was a nurse, my mom was a nurse. Mom was one of the first people to do rape crisis counseling in Harlem. She's one of the first people to do ambulatory detox in Harlem. So I grew up around the medical field. And I think the other part in connection with that is also like, it was very clear that that wasn't enough for Black people. And so I always had like spiritual communities around. I'm like, my offer ceremonies and like Sankofa stuff and like all of that was just like, you know, it's always some bembe, some freaking whatever going on around. So I just grew up around that. It wasn't like, I always say like I grew up in like an international Black city. Cause like Harlem, when I was growing up, it was like, there was like, you could hear Black people speaking like Jamaican patois, French patois, like Haitian patois, French, German, English, you know, and they were all Black. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like, so I just had this international idea of like what Blackness was on this like inter-religious idea of what Black was. You know, some cats were Muslim, some cats were like Muslim, and some cats were like 5% Muslim, and like Nation of Islam Muslim, and some cats were Christian, and some cats were Eastern Orthodox Christian, and some cats were Jewish, and then some cats were Black Hebrewites, which were different. It was just like this mix, right? That's why it's the African traditional religions with the Briti folks and the Yoruba folks. So that was on that side, and that's the side that I grew up with, right? The other side that I didn't grow up with was my dad, who he was one of the first people, he was the first person, I believe, along with some of his friends, to bring acupuncture to the South Bronx and Harlem. A 5-point ear technique to help reduce opioid cravings. His name is Matulu Shakur. He just got out of prison after like 36 years. So yeah, so he's that other side. But like I said, I didn't grow up with him. I didn't grow up with him. I didn't know he was my father until I was 25 years old.
Wow.
Okay.
Come from some folks.
So on both sides, just wow. And you also have someone else in your family too, who I also admire.
That you have in your family? Like
no, someone that you have in your family that I admire. Like I just recently did a conference out in LA and they had a whole art exhibit on the life of Tupac. And I went and I was just like, I love him.
So yeah, I always have to say, like, I never met Pac. I didn't get a chance to hang out with him. He died 2 years before I linked up with that side of the family.
Wow.
But my dad raised him. And then my sister, I don't really do half, like if you're my sister, you're my sister. So my sister grew up knowing who I was. And so she would piss off Pac and she would be like, "You're not my real brother. Ayize is my real brother, and I'm gonna go find him and da 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 da." And so like he knew who I was. I talked about this before, but on another podcast, but like there was one time I kind of met Pac. I didn't like, it was Above the Rim, that movie that he was in. Yeah, so I had just come back from Morocco and they were shooting around the corner from my mom's job. And my friends were like, "Yo, you should come through and like be in this movie." And I was like, whatever. And they're like, "No, everybody's here, Pocket's here." And at the time, I was like a straight punk kid. You know what I mean? I was like blonde mohawk, like
like punk, like hardcore.
Like, yeah, like, you know, HR Bad Brains, like, you know, that like CBGB's kind of fucking shit, you know, like Go-Go's, all that. So I was like, I don't know about this shit. They're like, "No, just come." I was like, okay. So like, you know, it's like a movie set. So they're like, "Okay, everybody wait over here. You know, like once we call cut, like wait for me, I'll let you go and you go sit in the stands." I was like, "Okay, cool." So I go and I'm trying to find my friends and they're like, "Yo, Ayize." And I was like, "Oh." And then Pac just turns around, he's like, "Ayize." And I was like,
I've heard that name before.
Not with that voice.
And it's like, it's height of Pac, you know what I mean? It's like already been shot once, already suing OPE, like he's like in it. And I'm like, this nigga fucked me up. And I don't even know what the fuck I did. So I was like, fuck. And he knows me. He knows the whole thing. My mom kept me away from all of it. I had no inkling at all.
You were the sheltered side.
Yeah. Well, I left too. I left pretty young. So I was like boarding school. I was like hanging out in the street. I was like going, like I was not a fam.
In the street.
So, yeah. Yeah. A lot of my friends were like, you know, House of Diva or whatever. Like I was hanging out with like the fucking homeless trans kids, you know? So my whole vibe was different, you know what I mean?
Streets,
So like,
yeah.
So he comes up to me, he's like, you know who I am? And I'm like, yeah, you Tupac Shakur. Yeah, I fucking know who you are. Like yeah, nigga, what? You know, and he's like, all right. He's like, you good? I was like, I mean, if you don't fuck me up, I'm good. Like, yeah, I'm good. He's like, all right. And then I went off, and my friends were like, how the fuck do you know Tupac? I'm like, I don't know Tupac. I don't, like, that's not my life. So
Wow.
that's the only time I met him.
So at the time, you didn't know what he knew?
Nope.
Wow.
Mm.
At least he introduced himself to you.
Yeah, it's an interesting introduction, but yeah. You know?
Hey, you know, family love.
Yeah.
We have all those, you know, the family members. It's just they're rough, but they're soft.
No, totally. And I think if I hadn't really known who he was, he would have just taken me in and he would have been like, come on, let's go, da da da. But I think like, again, you know, my mom, you know, I mean, with good reason. The place where my dad was doing that 5-point ear technique got shot up by NYPD like 2 days after my mom brought me there one time. So like she was real, and those guys, I mean, you know, my dad
NYPD as the villain.
Exactly. You know, like you want to talk about ops, you know, so like everybody was, I mean, not everybody was as cautious as they should be. And my mom was just like, nope, like it wasn't even an option. She wasn't like, stay out of it. She's like, you're not in it. You know, so like I just didn't have that context at the time.
Wow. Oof, this is great because I mean, we inherently wanted to start off season 2 with some real explicit political views on drugs and in terms of like how like different policies and just there's different things going on, and often we don't see the human in people, and being able to see the human in people can like really change things. So thanks for being here. We kind of got straight into it. Yeah. Like this is great.
No, I hear you. I mean, like you can't, even that, right? Like, it's like we don't see the human in people. I'm like, motherfucker, who the fuck is sitting in front of you? And like we are so quick to just like snatch someone's humanity from them, right? Like they're not really exist. And it's like, you know, I love Gil Scott-Heron. Gil Scott-Heron used to call the house when I was a kid.
What?
Right? Yeah.
See,
again, the whole clique, you know, they all connected, right? Last Poets, all them, right?
Y'all lived well.
Well, but you know, there's a lot, I mean, you know about Gil.
I mean,
right?
yeah.
Right? Gil was doing a lot of fucking, you know, he's on that Gil Scott.
Artfully.
Right. So do we dismiss that genius, that heart, that care, that love? Because my man had a relationship with heroin that like wasn't healthy for him. Or do we like extend compassion and be like, what can we do to keep you around longer? Because I'm pretty sure if he hadn't done time, he'd still be with us. You know? And that's the shit that pisses me off. Like, you know, autobiography of Malcolm X, you know, he talks about what's his name? It's not Trinidad James, but that's the name. West Indian Archie. Right. And he's talking about West Indian Archie and being a numbers runner. Right, back where everybody's playing 3 numbers, and whichever one comes up, that's the one that wins. And he said West Indian Archie kept all his numbers in his head and never made a mistake in like 10 years. He said that man could have been one of the greatest mathematicians on the planet.
Mm.
We don't know that man's potential because he was born Black in America.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't given that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel the same way about substance use. It's like you think that because somebody has chosen, or for whatever reason, the person is on this substance, that their contribution to this country, to this planet, to this world is done.
Mm-hmm.
That's fast. Like, I don't even know how you fix your mouth to say some bullshit like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. I wish people knew how regular genius was, especially like Black genius. Like, me and my friend were just talking about the other day how, like, if you nigga rig something, like, you're literally innovating. Like, like, oh, I gotta hurry up and find a like simple solution to this like thing going on, and I don't got a lot of resources. I mean, that's literally a like engineering design problem, but like, I don't know. Like Justin and I being privileged enough to go to engineering school, we can see like, okay, the innovation that we do in our lives is like very much so connected to the problems that like we want to solve, whether they be political or something that somebody's just gonna pay us for, if you want to be honest. Like, that's how it is.
Make
But
money, I'm not mad at you.
yeah, well, I chose grad school, so
Oh, you're gonna make money. You make money. Engineering grad school?
no, sociology.
Oh, you ain't gonna make money. I like you, but you ain't gonna make money. No social. Cute though. That's cute. I like it. Keep doing it, but you ain't gonna make money doing that.
Well,
I'm such an old
actually,
man right now. I know I am.
Jeez.
Are you gonna get a good job with that sociology degree? What you gonna do with that?
Math and science only.
Shoot. Better go back there and get that engineering, build a bridge or something.
yeah. No, but for real, so here's the thing is I want to do research. Well, I did research on how bioengineering and like the production of like science, technology, medical innovations, all of that stuff is reproducing racism, but like also the dynamics that are happening, like the social dynamics that are happening in the lab, I just paid more attention to them and like what DEI culture does so that we ignore and then reproduce it. So I was like excited to do the sociology work, and now I'm tired of it because sociologists are allowed to theorize and not do, and engineers are allowed to do and not theorize. So my solution is I'm just going to have to be a consultant and just tell Johnson and Johnson, no, this design choice is racist. Let's think about this one. Let's think about a subject pool. Let's systematize how we do this. So that's like also what I want to do besides work in cannabis. And somebody's going to pay me a lot of money for it because these white folk keep talking about what diversity is and they have no idea what it is.
You want to get into this? You want to talk about this? Because I'm in this.
Yeah.
I'm in this right now.
Yeah.
Listen,
That's I
can't talk about everything, but I can talk about in the psychedelic movement.
Okay.
And I can tell you that 9 times out of 10, when they're saying they want to do something, they are talking out their asses.
Mm-hmm.
I just wrote an email today. I did this training with this group last year. I brought 2 other people into it, 2 women of color. They wanted a diversity training, and I'm like, I don't do diversity training. That is that like you drop in racism is bad, yaka yaka yaka, give me my check, see you later, blah blah blah. I don't do that. I do not do that. I'm like, but if you want to talk about the ways in which white supremacy culture dismantles allyship across gender, race, class, sexual orientation, you have that dialogue. If you want to talk about the ways in which white supremacy culture has implicated psychedelics to be such a thing that is like unapproachable to large amounts of people of color, right? We can have that conversation. So did that. They were like, yo, this is kind of expensive. We were wondering, could you do a workshop for us? I was like, did you not hear me the first time, like they, and this is one of the best ones. I was consulting with I was consulting with an academic institution. And I was like, yo, really good idea here. Y'all got this money. You have an African-American studies program. Why don't you go and offer for grad students some research money to look at the role of plant medicine and African-Americans from when we got off the boat to the 1970s or 80s, right? African-Americans have synthesized white and Native American healing traditions, and you've been primarily off the book. So looking at oral histories, looking at stuff from the Schomburg to do whatever would be great. Somehow they managed to do it for Native Americans, but they couldn't do it for African Americans. But they will steady be there talking that shit about diversity. And then I look like a fucking lunatic when I'm like, do not talk to me about diversity if you can't talk to me about your own anti-Blackness. Right? Even when you look at the studies around psychedelics, I looked at one of these mega studies that looks at all the studies, looks at all the participants in the studies for all the psychedelics will help heal trauma. 2.9% African Americans in all the studies, which rounded out to about 7.8 people. Do not base anything on 7.8 Black people. 7.8 Black people will not be able to agree what day it is, what the weather is. Like, don't do that. But then you're gonna sit there talking about this is great for vets, and the majority of vets are people of color. You're gonna talk about PTSD. If you want to talk about PTSD in the United States, largely Black people, right? But they're out here steady talking that blah, 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 acting like they got numbers to back it up. But when you actually look at the numbers, they don't line up. So they'll say, yeah. But as soon as it costs something or demands that they shift how they do their research, because for psychedelics, a lot of we get ruled out not through explicit racism, but through implicit racism in terms of who's allowed to be in the study. So if you have diabetes, hypertension, 5 other things that African Americans have, they're not good for the study. Right? But if you're 18 to 35-year-old white individual who happens to just go to a college campus that is advertising for this, then we got a spot for you. And so then all the data is based off of that. Right? So it's just like, I'm not playing that game, So 9 times out of 10, I sound like a lunatic in psychedelic spaces because they're like, but we're trying so hard. We care so much. Yeah. And I'm like, you care when you don't have to sacrifice anything. As soon as you have to shift the way that you behave, pay, think, educate, all of a sudden it's an extra. It's not endemic. It's not at the core of it. It's an extra. So you want to do that work, God bless you. You seem younger than me. You got some strength, some vigor. You want to go in there and just scrap with them? You go right ahead, because I swear I'm about to tap out and be like, I'm just going to be over here in Oakland working with my people. Everybody else can eat a bag of donkey dicks.
Jeez.
That's just me.
We got to be the first podcast to say donkey dicks. That's fire. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many parallels with like that general like structure idea you described of like how, on the surface, like these policies are like advocated as like, or promoted as like, really helping people, when like in reality, you look at like, the way that, in this case, from the research standpoint, like the way that the study's done, or I guess what I was going to compare it to is like the last conversation that we had with Dr. Ayoka Nurse. She was studying a lot of public policy relating to like cannabis, and she was talking all about how like as we kind of get closer to like, well, not, I won't say closer, but how federal legalization of like recreational marijuana becomes like more of a topic, and how like there's these there's all these policies that are trying to promote like I guess like new owners of cannabis industries, or trying to Like some of them actually have like equity kind of promoted like at the forefront. But then when you start to look at things, when the more implicit things, like you're saying, like the cost involved for like these applications, or like not having like certain things on your record, like comparing to like, not, being afflicted with like, certain diseases that are like more common in like the Black community and stuff. Like when you get to these more implicit things, it's like you start to, disqualify these people that you really were looking to, you're on the surface that you're trying to help.
Yeah. I'm gonna be at the multidisciplinary association for psychedelic science, MAPS, in June. And I get to talk to hopefully I get to talk to Rick Doblin, who started MAPS. And Rick Doblin's been saying for years now, he's like, when MDMA becomes legal, we're gonna need like 1,500 new therapists a year to deal with the demand and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Look, I'm a therapist, okay? I've been a therapist since 2003. Here's what I can tell you. By and large, with exceptions, Black people don't go to therapy. I wish my clientele was primarily Black. It's not. I'm okay with it, right? But like, no, if I was relying solely on Black people for therapy, and I'm in Oakland, you know what I mean? Like, that would be a struggle. Maybe I could do it in Atlanta, right? So by saying 1,500 new therapists, you're kind of implicitly leaving out majority of Black people. So here's my question. Why not, we're gonna have to train 1,500 home health care nurses who are already in the community, or early childhood development folks, right? People who are running daycare centers, because they're already in the community. Or how about this? Let's go really radical. How about we train 1,500 fucking nonviolent drug offenders? Because they know about drugs, right? But the framing, right? Like, I think a lot of white people and a lot of Black people just keep missing the point that like white supremacy culture is not over. Puppy, it's just the water. See, my dog is mad about it. It's the water that we swim in. It's
Real.
You know what I mean? So like, if we're gonna really confront white supremacy culture, we're gonna have to get uncomfortable.
Real. We're
gonna have to get out of the water. Black, white, Latino don't matter, right? Like, we're gonna have to like hold our breath for a little bit and see how that feels. Like, what happens if you don't have white supremacy culture supporting every cell in your body? That's the thing that I think all of these research possibilities, social service things, all these things, not all of them, but many of them miss that point. And I'm really getting to the point where I'm like, if you are not actively and consistently addressing white supremacy culture, you're doing lip service. And maybe that's just where you gotta be right now. But like, yeah, I'm not interested. That doesn't fill my cup.
Right. Not fulfilling at all.
Like, I don't feel trauma. Like, when cats talk about like, this is trauma-informed therapy or trauma, I'm like, no, that's just being Black in America. Like, that's like, it's a traumatic experience. Like, life is a fucking traumatic experience for like 99.9% of people on this planet. So like, if we stop pathologizing it, we can maybe have like better empathy writ large for everybody. Like, I'm always like, you don't know what somebody's going through. Like, I've been walking down the street when my like best friend committed suicide the day before. Nobody would have known. You know what I mean? So like, I'm always like, everybody's where they're at. I'm giving people as much grace and as much slack as I can. But it's like, you got to be like trauma in order to get that empathy. And I'm like, no, like, you got life, right? Like, you're dealing with life. I got you. Like, if you're really engaged with your life and you're seeing both the positives and the deficits, and you're like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. I'm like, I got you. I'm with you. You know what I mean? But it's like, we make it so like about sickness and about illness and about like, like pathologizing, and you have to fix it. That's not my shit.
Yeah, exactly. Because Yeah, we could literally save so much like time, money, resources, effort if we just invested in life and valued life and living and like thought that was beautiful before we sat there and just let people be miserable and then saw death as a problem to solve.
Right.
Like, but we don't value life. And it's like people don't want to hear things like that. Like they're like when you're like, oh, American values, life is not one of them. Like,
Not at all.
wild.
Not at all.
You talked a bit about your, well, I guess more of a rant about your experience regarding like psychedelic research. And then you also mentioned your documentary that you're writing on the, on the topic as well. So, just want to give you some space to talk about that and just kind of, I guess yeah, like how was your experience with your in the industry, like tied into that?
Yeah, so I've been working with psychedelics since like 2004, 2005, right? Everybody I work with, white, Black, Latino, Vietnamese, Hmong, Filipino, Cambodian, Samoan, Oakland, just Oakland.
Mhm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
I go away for a couple of years, get an MFA. I come back to the Bay Area, and it's psychedelic this, and San Francisco psychedelic blah, and Oakland psychedelic blah, and the psychedelic blah, da, da, da. And I was like, dope, let's do this. And I walk in, and it is like a sea of vanilla ice cream. Like, it was just, it was like white, like honestly, like I'm not joking. I'm not joking.
Vanilla ice cream.
I hadn't seen this many white people assembled together in Oakland in like a decade. I was like, fuck is going on? Like, what is happening? But listen, I navigate white. Look, I got 3 master's degrees. Trust me, I know how to navigate white spaces. I worked as a school therapist for a decade at private prep schools. I know how to navigate white spaces. So I go into these white spaces, and these people are fucking up. Like the one, I go to this like psychedelic training thing, and the husband is molesting dudes and has been molesting dudes for like 20 years. The wife like acts like she's the shit, but all of her stuff is raggedy and taken from Mexican people. And I'm like, yeah, no, I can't carry your lineage. I'm not fucking with y'all. Then I go to this other thing, and it's like a church, and I'm like, I have a master's in divinity. Like, I work in religious spaces, so I'm like, yes, let's do a psychedelic church and help them put their paperwork together and whatever. Turns out it's just like an old white dude that like wants a cult. Exactly. I was like, this motherfucker done got me fucked up in the game. I thought I was doing some real shit here, and this little culty motherfucker, damn, drank the fucking Kool-Aid, right? So I was pissed, right? So I was like, well, fuck him too. I still say and so I was like, okay, look, I can, and this is 2 generations of activists. I can try and find the thing I want, or I can make the thing that I want. So me and some other folks were like, okay, let's call together the Black people that we know in the psychedelic space. And we're just going to get together, and we're just going to parlay. Like, we're just going to kick it. I'm going to get the food. We're going to get a retreat center. It's going to be like 3 days. And it's just going to be like, where you been, where you at, and where you're going. And that's it. We don't have to do a 5-point agenda. We don't have to have outcomes, just us together. And when I tell you that shit was magic, that shit was magic. Like, cats came in, because, these are cats and these are bigwigs in the shit. You know what I mean? Like, we got like Nifa, Tyler Washington from the Fireside Project. Sarah has written like gang of papers, like psychedelic papers. We got like spiritual healers. We got dude from Oakland Hyphae, which like did the first like mushroom testing, like outside of academic institutions. All these cats together, they're used to navigating white spaces too. So they come in and they were like, because like they agreed, and then they were like, what the fuck did I get into? Right. And then they come and they're like, oh wait, it's just us. I'm like, yeah. They're like, it's just us for us by. I'm like, yeah. They're like, fuck yeah. And so everybody started chilling and everybody started having a good time. And it was like the best 3 days of summer camp you ever had in your life. And then I had 9 cameras there. And I interviewed everybody who was there. And we had this one day where everybody was in a room together and we just like, chopped it up and was like, what's going on? What's real? Like, what, where's everybody at? And so got all that footage. And since September, I've been editing that footage with a friend of mine who's been doing a lot of the technical stuff, which has been really great. And so we're going to be showing it. The big release is at the MAPS conference in Colorado in June. But then the goal is to do sort of like a tour of, Black medicine spaces around the country.
Wow.
Show the doc, but then also like invite in local community and then just have like Q&A, dialogue, with whoever can show, like, and be part of it.
Wow.
I think part of my like fuck the psychedelic space, and it's not fuck the psychedelic space, but psychedelic funders, I'm kind of like, y'all are, like, we do not agree. Let's put it like that. I've been to like the majority of the big donators, and literally one sent this email, like, I'm not gonna look it up to read it word for word, but basically what it said was, the goal of having more Black people enter the psychedelic space doesn't fit with our goals as an institution. And I was like, you put that down in an email?
Hey, they told the truth though.
They did. I was impressed, right? I was like, okay, y'all got some hair on your chest. Just gonna say that shit out loud.
Like, let's be honest, we can fix it if it's open like that.
Right? So I'm like, but one of the most blah 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 motherfuckers out there, and I'm like,
oh,
understand?
So the dissonance is still there.
Oh,
still there.
Absolutely.
That's remarkable.
Here's what it is. They don't understand our importance. Like you were saying before about like when you like niggify something and you like, wow, look at it, I made that shit that's not supposed to be there, right? That's like initially what attracted me to Afrofuturism. Right? I was like in that old school Afrofuturism listserv back when there were fucking listservs.
Wow.
Yeah. And there was a whole parlay about like broken technology and like second, third life technology, right? And how Africa was like the center of like actual recycling, like recycling phones to be computers, like recycling like screens to be glasses, like recycling speakers to be headphones, like that. Like this was not just based off of utility, but there was an aesthetic about it, right? That some people were calling Afrofuturist, right? And I was like, I like that, They don't know the magic that we do, despite the magic that we do, right? Despite tolerating their asses for 400 plus years, despite like giving us shitty ass food and us making fucking gumbo and fucking amazing things, despite them giving us fucking old fucked up military instruments and us turning it into jazz. They don't understand the magic that we do, and they think that we're going to do things the way that they do it. So like psychedelic thing, even with that, I'm like, why are you guys taking this posture of, like I was saying earlier, of like victim, right? that like the clinical model is like, okay, well, you have two clinicians sitting there and you have one person who's taking the medication and they need to sit down and lay down and have a blindfold over them and they'll listen to calming music. I'm like, that is the posture of the dead, right? That is someone attending to someone who is ill. For thousands of years, this work has been used to invigorate people. People didn't just take some mushrooms and sit down. People took some mushrooms and went running. You know what I'm saying? People drank some shit and got married, right? People smoked some shit, had a dream, told the entire community about the dream, and the community interpreted what that dream should be.
You saying Martin was cheating?
Exactly.
I had a dream.
Hey, you see how important our visions are to us? You see how important? We still talking about one nigga's dream 50 fucking 60 years later. We still talking about, he's like, nah, man, he had this dream. You got to hear it. The shit was crazy. We said we was all going to get to the mountaintop. He had a dream for us, right? That's how we do, right? Like, a lot of times when I'm trained with medicine works, especially, you know, there's like two camps. Some folks are like, will you stop telling everybody what the fuck you saw? That was your vision for you to figure out, right? And then there's another camp that's like, you tell other people your visions and then you shut the fuck up and listen to what comes back. Because if you journey with a group of people, you may have only gotten one part of the message. This person may need to hear your part in order for them to say their part. But like, there's community, so there's lots of different ways to approach this work. But this clinical model that everything is being filtered through is also a white model, which strips some of the, I think, the most important parts of this work out of the work.
Yeah.
Jeez.
And I think, this is just the perfect transition to the second part of your bio, because
we still in that?
Yeah. The Afrofuturism talk is beautiful. So in 2009, you self-published The Liminal People, which was later picked up and distributed by Small Beer Press. And you wrote two more books in the series, The Liminal War and The Entropy of Bones. And then the fourth and final installment, the Liminal series, is forthcoming from the Small Beer Press.
It's out. I think it's out now.
It's out now.
As of yesterday, maybe?
As of yesterday!
Congrats.
Got a reading at Small Beer Press next week. I mean, at City Lights Books in San Francisco next week. Yeah.
Oh, forever in Cali. We'll come find you. That's clutch.
Please.
Yay! Say less. We like to travel. And you've also written a graphic novel titled Box of Bones with two-time Eisner Award John Jennings. And Box of Bones is published by Rosarium Press with more installments forthcoming.
October, second half of Box of Bones is coming out in October.
Wow.
It was going to come out this month, but they wanted to push back to get a little more press. We've also been optioned. We'll see if that goes through, but the company is looking at trying to do a TV show based off of Box of Bones.
Wow. A company. Yes.
I don't want to say their names because the thing I've learned is options don't mean shit. Once they start to, even development doesn't mean shit necessarily. I'm not going to say anything until it's on TV. No, I'm not going to say nothing until it's on Hulu the next day. Then I'm like, okay.
The next time we interview you, oh yeah, the show just got out yesterday.
Listen, and that's how I might know that it's happening. That's how separated I am from the whole process.
Wow. So you have quite the list, and your work's been written about favorably in the New York Times, the Los Angeles Review of Books, and got star reviews in Kirkus? I don't even know what that journal is. And you've been an honored guest at the 2007 FogCon.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And we're a featured panelist at Book Riot.
Yep.
And your book's ability, your books defy easy categorization, but hold on to what you consider to be the veracity of fiction's ability to expose the human condition, which we've just touched on briefly here, I feel like, and at least in essence. In your novels, the reader will find science fiction, romance, action, spirituality, and philosophical questions with uncomfortable answers. So us tying together so many of the elements of this interview, and once again, reintroducing yourself as a science fiction author, could we please put some virtual round of applause for our guest? So yeah, science fiction. This is, I guess what do you like most about it? Like, I don't even know where you want to get into it, because it's just like, I just love the fact that I think Black people have been leading science fiction. Like, I grew up a nerd, but I was never the nerd who watched like Star Wars or Star Trek, although, I hear those are great shows, but like, I was exposed to Octavia Butler because I was just interested in reading more stuff with Black women in it. And I was like, oh, she's just talking about the like world and what it is now. And then I got exposed to Alondra Nelson's work and was also tied with her as a sociologist. And then through there started to be more exposed to Afrofuturism and music and things, and like even like comics with like Drixia and like, Parliament, so like all these cool stuff. So to me, like like when I think of like sci-fi, I think Afrofuturism, like the two are like inseparable. So having you on here is like, that is like the reason why I was like, you have to come on the podcast. All the other stuff, and then also, your interest with liberation and psychedelics, but just like all the other stuff, I think is just complements everything so well. So yeah.
Yeah, I gotta get more interviews with Black people, because you say it complements so well. People are like, it just seems like it's a lot of different stuff. It just seems like, and I'm like, fuck you. Like, this is like, I'm like you, like I was a geek. I was a complete and total geek. Like, when everybody was a gangster, I was a geek. Do you know
I'm
what
a
I mean?
gangster and a geek. I'll say that.
I was not a gangster. I was a geek, and I was
Oh,
a punk. And like, I was like,
geez.
what that meant was that I was like, I would not start shit, but if you fuck with my comics, we would have problems. I had my fucking Doc Martens on, fucking Oxblood Red. I would stomp your fucking ankles. Like,
Oh, the Oxford Redneck Doc Martens.
like, had my torn up jacket. Like, I was that kid, you know what I mean? So like, I wasn't cool, but like, I just fought, and I was like, I was on one level, I had these like, back to Africa, adults around me that seemed like they were living in an alternative world, because I was like, y'all realize you lost, right? Like, I don't want to be a dick about it, but like, you realize like, we are not liberated, right? Like, that crackhead over there is not liberated, my guy, right? But like, they got that narrative running, right? And public schools, and they're like, if you work really hard and you can achieve the American dream. And I was like, who? Like, none of my teachers live in New York. Everybody lives in New Jersey, because you can't buy shit. So what do you like? What is it, right? So everybody had this alternative way of looking at the world, and I just wanted mine, right? And so I start, you read Parable of the Sower, is it really science fiction? Like, it doesn't feel like science fiction. It just feels like it was written a little early, but it didn't feel so out there. Do you know what I mean? And then, like I said earlier, I'm surrounded by all these spiritual communities and religious communities, and I'm seeing shit, and they're sacrificing chickens over my head and shit. And so when motherfuckers start talking about like psychics and whatever, I'm like, yeah, okay, yeah, I got that. Yeah, what? Like people talk about magical powers. I'm like, well, I hope so, because this nigga just killed a chicken over my head. So I hope I'm getting something out of this. You know what I mean? Like it wasn't wild to me. I wasn't like, how does this happen? I was like, everything that was presented in sci-fi, I was like, okay, I get it. Right? Like this makes sense to me. Right. Plus, I was reading comics like on the regular. That was the thing that like I consistently read. So I was just indoctrinated with science sounding shit. It seemed fantastic and interesting. So sci-fi was just like I mean, what the fuck else is a Black kid in Harlem supposed to read? You can only read Man Child of the Promised Land for so long. You can only read Bruce for like so long. Like at some point, I need something that's like entertaining and interesting and like takes me out of this bubble, as opposed to poor Negroes not being able to survive. I'm like, I'm not interested in that. Uncle Remus is cool, fine, right? But what else? So sci-fi to me was just like this liberation place. And I was just like out there. And then, doing all my things, doing all my spiritual studies and whatever. And then Dark Matter comes out, right? It's an anthology of Black sci-fi, which starts with W.E.B. Du Bois. Short story, The Comet. And I was like, the fuck? We've been talking about this shit this long? And I was like, cool. I'll actually tell you this story. This is actually funny. So in there is a thing for, there was a transcript of the Afrofuturism listserv. So I was like, clack, 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 bang. Okay, cool, I'm on it. I don't know what a fucking listserv is. I don't know how I got here. I just type shit on the address line. Boom, I'm here. I'm joining up. Cool, right? So I was just reading things. And it was like DJ Spooky was on there. Nalo Hopkinson was on there. I forget his name. Public Enemy's former publicist was on there. It was like all these.
Wow.
It was like mid early days of the internet, right? So I mean, it had to be. I was still doing dial-up. So they were on there, and there's like these fractions, not fractions, but like orientations, right? And there's this definite like back to Africa orientation, this like Black nationalist orientation. And I've never been a fan of that, just because a lot of times it was like a lot of cloaked, like, just, misogyny and like homophobia shit. And, so I always kind of fuck with them. Anyway, somebody on there wrote, Black people shouldn't have relations with white people, shouldn't have sexual relations with white people while white supremacy is present, or some shit like that. And for me, I was like, I know this is 90s. I was like, I know the dangers of policing Black bodies. I don't care who's doing it, Black or white. That's a problem, right? I was also a little shit talker back then. I've changed so much, right? And I had a white girlfriend. And, and I was like, and I wrote, I was like, I just had sex with a white girl, and it was really good too. like that was just the title. I swear. I was like, because like I spent time with the whole thing where I was like, yes, but I was like, look, if we start policing Black bodies, then who gets to be the police? I don't want to police anybody else's body. I don't want anybody to police. Pleasure is something that like is endemical to the human condition, and however people find pleasure, as long as they're not hurting somebody else, should be fine. Once we start doing this, there's a problem. Wrote that out all very well, but then I put in the tag and I just had sex with a white girl. To this day, I have not gotten so much hate mail in my entire life.
That's not funny. I'm sorry, that's not funny.
It's totally funny. Like, I was like, I didn't think I could get like 500 emails in a day. I was like, good God.
It's not that deep. Like, it's not that
Like,
deep.
hey, what is wrong with you, brother? I feel so sorry for you. I was like, God damn. But here's the thing. There were 3 people that like kind of stood up for me. One was Juba Kalamka, who ran this queer hip hop group out here called Pomo Afro Homos. Deep Dick Collective, sorry, that's the name of them. Deep Dick Collective, Pomo Afro Homos. This woman named Camille AC, I don't know what happened to her. And Nalo Hopkinson, who is a Black queer Caribbean sci-fi writer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nalo Hopkinson.
And Nalo, like to this, not if you don't know who Nalo is and you like Octavia Butler, like you gotta know Nalo, because like Nalo's shit is fucking fire, right? And like her and Octavia were friends. She's like, yeah, she's like, she was supposed to be on Nalo and Octavia were gonna be on a book tour together right when Octavia died.
Wow.
But Nalo is like, I went to study with her at UC Riverside. Like, Nalo's been the homie ever since. Like, she's my big sister. Like, you know, whatever Nalo needs, she's got from me. And like, that's just true, you know? And it's like, that to me, like that relationship and those relationships, that was Afrofuturism to me. You know what I mean? Like, it was, these are Alterno Negroes, which was my previous term. Right, like
alternative Negroes.
Yes, Alterno Negroes involved in science and science fiction, but like who actually give a shit about each other.
Ooh.
You know what I mean?
I wish that was an acronym for something.
I know, you spell it out. I can't do it. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, so that's how I like got into it. And then, you know, if you're writing weird shit and you're Black, it's probably gonna be called Afrofuturism. Or Afro-surrealism, or you know what I mean? Like
if you're writing weird shit and you're Black. Yeah, you fit in. Blackness is always cool.
I hope so.
Inherently.
That's like
even if you're a Black nerd, you're cool. Like,
you're cooler than a white nerd. That's what I mean.
But it's like I've always felt like my nerdy side was cool as hell. Like, nerds have swag. Black nerds have swag, in my opinion.
I gave it up. I was like, I can't think about what y'all think of me ever.
That's where the swag comes from. Because you don't care.
Some folks are like all about it, and so like they got their thing and da-da-da-da. I was like, you know, your gear is fucked up. I'm like, I know. They're like, I'm like, I don't, how you be hollering? I'm like, I don't. Like, I'm just me. I'm doing my thing. I'm like reading. I'm writing weird shit. Like, I'm cooking. Like, I'm hanging out with the dogs. Like, I'm not trying to impress anyone because I don't know how to do it. And I don't have time to think about that. Like, it's the cost benefit analysis doesn't work for me. Do you know what I mean? Like, if it's like, by the end of the day, if I put all this energy in and 5 people think I'm cool, but I never see them again, I'm like, fuck that. I could have been writing a novel. You know what I mean? So like, I never, to this day, like, I don't give a shit about cool. I don't give a shit about like what's like what I just remember there's a lot of people lying a lot. A lot of people like, oh, gangster, gangster, gangster. I'm like, really, homie? Because I know you're not a gangster. Like, you know what I mean? Like hard at, you know, this is back when every black dude had to be hard. And I was like, dude, your mom does your laundry. Like, I can't, like, I hear you say like, Mom, where my clean shirt? That's not gangster, you know? Like, I know what gangster looks like. I know what that shit feels like. I know when those dudes press, and I know when you press. You ain't pressing. You know what I mean? So like, I just never got into it, and young. And then I was such a Alterno Negro. I was going back and forth to fucking Humboldt County, California, and Morocco, and you know, doing all these, like being in all these weird places, being in all these like white spaces, and being on these like alternative things that like, I remember I started working in juvenile hall. This kid was like,
Oh my.
yeah, this kid was like, yo, man, I don't even know what any of that is. Like, he just had nothing for me. He was like, the fuck is you? Like, what do you mean? He's like, the fuck? I mean,
Like
no.
he was like, I'm not gonna mess with you because
He was just
you clearly don't give a damn.
This is what he said. It was a funny. He's like, "Yo, did you get adopted by white people or something?" Like, but just be real. I was like, "No, my guy. Like, like I got blonde hair, and I don't know." I was like,
He's
"Okay."
just vibing.
He couldn't figure it out. I mean, we ended up being cool, but like, that was the thing. Like, yes, with a lot of those kids, especially in juvie, they didn't have any idea that they could be something more than what they saw.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I was like, okay, well, if nothing else, you're seeing something different.
Mm-hmm.
I guess we'll just kind of starting to transition now, but what we like to do is ask people some is general like rapid fire questions about their experience with cannabis as given like, you know, the theme of this podcast and everything, and you know, kind of bringing it back to that. All right. First and foremost, do you have a favorite strain?
No,
You don't.
it's marketing.
How would you describe like the way you partake? Like, you know, do you typically like smoke or vape? Is there a certain time that you could consume?
All edible.
Mm.
Nowadays, usually at night. Sometimes I cook with it.
Mm.
Oh, what
Or
do you cook with it?
yeah, once you infuse that oil, like
Pretty much do anything.
yeah. My favorite is basting a chicken and then hitting some.
Ooh,
Wow.
weed chicken. Oh, you eating good.
That's what I'm saying, right? And it's like just part of the meal, like, and you don't have to trip out. Oh, actually, you know what? My favorite. I was in Morocco one time and had this cookie, and it was like hash pressed, like super, super thin. So like thin sheet, powdered sugar, honey, sesame seeds, poppy seeds, and then beef, basically hash, put on top of it. Man, I thought I was supposed to have that whole cookie. My friends were like, dude, that was a cookie for everybody. All I can say is that I woke up 3 days later. I didn't remember going to sleep.
Straight hash.
Just straight hash, just straight. But that shit was so good. It didn't even taste funky. Yeah. So that was my favorite, but I'm not doing that. Well, maybe nibbles.
Like, I tried again. Like, I feel like if you ever had a bad edible experience and you know you took too much, like, it's like, I want to try it again. I'll just try less next time. Like, I just met my limit.
Yeah. I mean, I used to run weed brownies for this lady in San Francisco that would do free weed edibles for folks with HIV.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and she would pay me in weed brownies. And I used to just call it HIV high because I was like, y'all niggas must be fucking on another level to eat a whole one of these and then eat food after. I eat half of one of these things. I'm crawling under the bed and like putting blankets on her head. I'm still like, it's too dark. It's too light. It's too light. Like I can't get HIV high.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
And this is the second time we're talking about HIV and marijuana this season. We were talking about it with my friend and Jorge and like the preseason opener, and just the communities most affected by both like HIV and both marijuana policy activism, the war on drugs, etc., being so intertwined. Like, it's like you can't pay attention to one issue without paying attention to another. So
I hate to keep bringing it back to psychedelics, but I've just been editing all day, and like this is my thing with the psychedelic thing, where I'm like, Black people have been the most impacted by the drug war in this country than anybody else. So how is it that you get to run this psychedelic, that psychedelic, blah blah blah, whatever, and you're not including Black people as part of your liberation strategy? Right? And it can't just be like, oh, we're gonna give some free fucking passes, or we're gonna like no, like on a fundamental level, you've got to figure out, okay, how do we reach out to people that have been told that if they do this one time, they're going to end up by themselves down by the river, arrested for public, indecency or whatever, right? And that we've internalized that. That's the thing that a lot of people fucking forget. The people who turned quickest on Black substance users was the Black church. They're like, we don't want these crackheads in this community. We are sick and tired of these drug addicts. I'm like, you mean your cousin? You mean your auntie? I know you don't mean your mama. Right? So that's some work that as Black people, we have to do. That's like, I'm trying to get in front of some Black clergy to be like, listen, we need to re-articulate our commitment to our community through substance use, right? That substance use doesn't stop our allyship as community. It's something we incorporate and we move forward with. Because we've given up on a lot of people period. We've given up on a lot of people. I'm sorry.
We haven't even given them a chance.
No, not at all. Shit. Remember crack babies? Were you alive for crack babies? They were telling us, we're going to have crack babies coming through these schools, and the crack babies are going to have knives, and the crack babies are going to be developmentally disabled, and the crack babies are going to kill the mamas, and the crack babies are going to be overwhelming. It's going to be it's going to be an egg in the snake. There's no way we're going to be able to deal with all the amount of crack babies that come out. Well, what does the science say? The science says that any baby born addicted to withdrawal systems to a methamphetamine, generally within 5 to 7 days, that withdrawal symptoms are done. Any developmental delays that are done, generally by 1.5 years, you cannot tell the difference.
Wow.
But we ain't screaming about alcohol babies. We ain't screaming about fetal alcohol syndrome, which guess what? Is permanent. Which guess what? Does have an impact that goes on for your entire life. So we don't see a bunch of white crack babies. That's not what we saw. We saw a bunch of Black children in neonatal care, and we were made to fear them. Right? Or we were told to fear them. Right? So, yeah, this whole politic has to get reevaluated. I'm sorry, you want to talk about marijuana? I know. I'm sorry. I'll stop.
No,
you're good. I mean, like you said, it's all
intertwined.
all the issues are connected, and like, yeah. I don't know how to transition out of that, but aside from weed chicken, what other munchies do you like?
I got these shrimp chips that are hella good.
Shrimp chips? You got that from the Asian grocery store, didn't you?
No, I got weed shrimp chips.
Weed shrimp chips?
Cali, yo.
Huh? What?
Cali.
Oh, Cali. Yeah, Cali. What's in them? Like fish?
Yeah.
Is it like fried or is it like dried?
It's like the Asian big old shrimp chips, but
that sounds a little freaky to me. I don't know.
It's good. Crumple that shit up in some ramen.
Oh, okay. Now you're talking.
Okay.
I'm following. I'm back. I'm thinking you're snacking on it like, I don't know, like a chip with like some dip or something.
You could too.
I mean, yeah.
Okay, I'm lost again.
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
How about? I was gonna say, how about music? Like, what about like music as you're consuming or anything? How is that intertwined in your habits at all?
What is it? Saxophone Colossus is the name of the album. What is his name? Sonny Rollins. Sonny Rollins, Saxophone Colossus. Pretty much anything that anything Alice Coltrane recorded. Pharoah Saunders. That,
Oh,
yeah,
Alice Coltrane is like journey music. Like,
exactly.
that's tripping music. That's good tripping music.
Yep. I mean, it's all like that connected to the spirit, right? Like connected to
Mm,
something other than the self shit.
yeah. Oh, that's why doing yoga high just hits different. Ugh.
I mean,
Okay,
that's what we're supposed to be doing.
instead of working so ghetto.
We can do both, but it's like, most other places on the planet, they don't work all year round. They'll be like, we done for 3 months, but we be back.
For real.
You know?
I'd work towards fulfillment. Like I love to put work in projects that I think help people. But other than that, this labor just for the sake of labor is exhausting.
Goofy as fuck.
Goofy. All right. And then lastly, is there anything that you like to watch or listen to, like in terms of podcasts, shows, like other stand-up comedians when you're elevated?
I mean, stand up, like, I love, look, I love people who have a tight set, but I love going to people just working shit out.
Mm,
I am the best. I am your best audience member if you are just working shit out. Because
mm,
I am so gracious with my laughs. Like, even if it sucks, like you'll hear a laugh and that'll give you comfort, but you will know that that laugh means that wasn't funny.
oh, oh, oh.
And like, if you kill it, I'm crying. Like I'm crying on the floor. So no matter what, you're gonna get a laugh because like comedians at their heart just want attention. So I'm like, here you go, here's your attention, but here's the like the attention you really want if you're killing it. So yeah, I love live shit when I'm high. One of the really interesting things I've learned with a lot of my journey work is like me being high is just me not being afraid.
Mm,
Like it's
mm,
just like there's just less or no fear and like just more access to joy.
mm.
So like half the time, like I think sometimes people think I'm high when I'm not. I'm
Amen.
just in a good spot.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of people are like that. Like I myself am like that. And it's just because when you start to like learn how to access that joy that you get when you're high, you can like get there when you're sober. Cause it's just like, oh, I can just not care. Like stuff can be really in a bad spot and I can still be happy because I just feel like being happy.
Yep.
Like, I don't know. It's
I
like,
was just,
it's,
I do the
yeah.
not today thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
when the shit gets, like I'm like, I'm like, you know what? Not today, Satan. I'll give you tomorrow. Stop it, puppy.
Not today. Ugh. Okay, so thank you so much for coming on. This was so good. Obviously, our interview went way over because you have done a lot of cool stuff, and we didn't even know the half of it. Um, so we just really appreciate you being on here. Um, is there anything you want to add before we ask you to plug us to, your website, social events, and just other opportunities to connect with you?
Check out the Liminal People Quartet, Liminal People, Liminal War, Entropy of Bones, Heroes of the Unknown World, all of which are out now. The graphic novel, Box of Bones is out now. Part 2 will be out in October, and The Last Count of Monte Cristo, another graphic novel of mine, which is being put out by Megascope Abrams Press, will be out in April. So come and get them. I'll be talking at the Confluence or Convergence space put on by Psychedelics Today in April, and in April 1st and 2nd. And if you go to the MAPS conference in Colorado in June, I will be there with the world premiere of A Table of Our Own, which is our documentary about Black people and psychedelics. You can go on the website, tableofourown.org, and see some footage we already have. If you want to sign up for the newsletter to know when we're coming to a town near you, or you want to invite us to a town near you,
Thanks.
be happy to come and show our film and click and join with Black and brown medicine communities around this country.
Hey. Okay, you heard it here, folks. All these different opportunities to connect will be in the show notes, as well as your socials. Once we make our post, we will tag you in it on our Instagram. Once again, thank you so much. This was so dope. Like, it's like with each guest, we always know a few things that we're interested in exploring about them, and then the conversation goes left, right, up, and down, and I'm like, oh, yep. Like, the diversity is trash rant, the amount of times that I have, like, ran that shit up with somebody, and I'm like, yeah, and it's a new method of oppression, and I think the new racial order we're living under is, like, one where diversity is the cause of it. Like, it's like, yeah. I'm just happy to talk with you. Thank you.
Nah, thanks for inviting me.
Of course.
Yes, my ear is saying yes. So.
Ooh. All right. And with that, I think we are good to close out. Peace out.